So welcome back.
Yes, welcome back.
So this week was rough. So if you guys are following us on Twitter, you have seen that I've not been around.
And I'm never around, so I can't be held accountable for not being there.
Yes. So normally we will be there chatting with you guys, and we are not missing an upload. So I call that a win. But
yeah, since we've been back, we are pretty consistent, thankfully.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
I mean, we're not doing great over here. But anyways, normally we like to put things out to promote, and we like to do something creative, to kind of make things fun. And
right.
we've been struggling, right? We've been struggling. We have a few ideas, but struggling.
We have a few ideas, but it's just we've been pressed for time quite a bit. So
So what I'm going to ask of you guys is if you guys have something fun you'd like to see us do for any of the last movies. So either Nightmare on Elm Street, Let the Right One In, or this one, The Prestige. Let us know, tweet it at us, tell us what it is, and we're going to try to, do a few things that you guys have asked for, because we need to put more things out there. We need to be better about talking with you guys, and we've dropped the ball. That's on us. That's on me. That's really
it's definitely. I'm a social media. She has dropped the ball.
I'll take the heat for this one time only. Right. But yeah, so this week's movie was The Prestige.
Yeah, I'm Tyler.
I'm Shay, and this is Cinematically Correct. And yeah, this is a fun movie for me because one of my best friends in the entire universe requested it, let me know about it. And also, my dad was a magician growing up, which is just
near and dear to your heart. It's part of your childhood. And
I kind of wish we went to his house and watched it with him, because I have to imagine this has to be a movie that he was in love with. I have to imagine.
Do you know if he's seen it?
I don't. Well, I don't know. I actually texted him while researching. Now, granted, it is 8:30 at night. I mean, he should be awake, but he didn't respond yet. But it's just one of those things, just something I would like to share with him. But yeah, so there's a lot of warm, good feelings going into this movie.
I mean, I don't have any of that going into this movie. I do really like all of the actors in this movie. Star-studded cast. We'll get to that in a bit, but I had no thoughts on it going into it. It's been on my list, but based off the trailer, I wasn't overly enthused when it came out back in the day. But
there's even something warm and fuzzy for us as a couple in this movie. This movie just has all the things. So anyways, before we really dive in, you have a beer, right?
I do. It's Death or Glory. That's from Long Ireland Beer Company. Not Long Island, Long Ireland.
Actual Ireland, or is that a play on words or something?
I think it's a play on words because I think it's from New York, but it's Long Ireland.
Okay, got it.
Death or Glory, which is applicable to this movie because there's lots of death and it's
Is there any glory?
Well, it's the pursuit of the glory.
But do they ever achieve it? Ooh.
Mixed results. It's a raspberry sour.
It wasn't a good crack. Not impressed there.
Oh yeah, that's quite nice.
Well, I'm glad that you enjoy it.
I'll give that a 4.5.
Oh wow!
Out of 5.
That's a high score coming from you. I don't think you give 5s. So
I don't think I've given a single 5 ever.
Wow!
So.
Even when you went to Germany?
I mean, I didn't put them in the app then. That was before. So
gotcha.
I mean, that's probably the closest I would ever be is in Munich for Oktoberfest. But
anyways, do you have a brief synopsis for us?
Brief synopsis.
Brief synopsis.
It's the story of, presumably 2 magicians and their feud over being the best magician in late 1800s London. Mm-hmm. And the whole movie is centered around they're one-upping each other, and then one of the magicians being tried for murder of the other.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the movie.
Yeah. Okay, so the cast. First of all, I didn't know that we were going to be doing another Hugh Jackman movie as soon after. I had no idea. I looked none into this movie when we put it on the list.
I mean, I'm fine with doing basically all Hugh Jackman movies.
Same.
We can change the podcast over to just Hugh Jackman movies. That's not a deal breaker.
I'm there. So Hugh Jackman plays Robert Angier. Is that what you say?
Angier.
And basically he's a magician who, his wife passes away early on in the film, and this kind of ignites this he's already has a rivalry with the magician and he wants to be better, but this like ignites it even more.
So this is what starts the whole back and forth one-upmanship and then needing to be better at all costs kind of just never-ending pursuit.
Yes. Now it's Hugh Jackman, right? So
Yeah.
first of all, like he can do no wrong. It does remind me of The Greatest Showman in the way he, did the performing and all of that kind of stuff.
Can he do no wrong?
Hugh Jackman?
Well, in this movie, he definitely does wrong.
Oh, well, yes, but Hugh Jackman cannot.
All
Like, let's not argue about that. But I mean, I loved him in this character. I mean, he played it quite well, and there's nothing I can complain about there. You have anything you want to say about Hugh Jackman?
No, I mean, he's great in everything. I don't think I've seen him in a bad role.
And normally we'd say what else he was in, but we literally just did Greatest Showman. Please see past podcasts. Thank you.
We did Eddie the Eagle. He's in that.
Oh, that's true.
So he's been in so many things. He's Wolverine, for God's sakes.
Exactly.
That's what you know him for.
Then Christian Bale played Alfred Borden. I mean, Batman.
Yeah, he's Batman. So
yeah.
two superheroes.
Yeah, he's Batman. There's more superheroes in this movie. And he plays this guy who is in a rivalry. He's the one who kills Robert's wife, and sort of. And it's kind of like him trying to one up Robert the whole time. It's kind of them going back and forth.
Yeah.
Again, Christian Bale's Christian Bale. Like, I mean, what is there not to like about Christian Bale? I don't think that there's anybody that doesn't like him. He's an amazing actor.
Yeah.
So enjoyed him in this role. I hated him, his character, like hated, wanted to kill him and punt him, like just hated him. I will mention Michael Caine played Cutter because he's Alfred from Batman.
Okay.
So, Scarlett Johansson, who's Black Widow, if we wanted to know if there was any more superheroes. In this movie there is.
I think Alfred is technically part of the canon as a badass in his own right. So
I mean, like
they're all
superheroes. So Scarlett Johansson plays Olivia. She is Robert's assistant, who then moves over to being Alfred's assistant because he sends her to spy, but she's brokenhearted that he sends her, so she switches sides. It's a whole thing. I love Scarlett Johansson as well. I think she's amazing. I don't have anything negative. Just I want to have something negative to say. Say something negative about.
No. I'm not gonna rise to the occasion. I don't think there's a bad word to say about any of the people in this movie.
No, there isn't. David Bowie played Tesla. Now, I did not know that when I was watching the film. Like, I don't know what was wrong with me, but I just needed to mention that because, like, what?
Yeah. I mean, I saw that it was David Bowie straight away, but it's Tesla, so it was kind of an ancillary character. And
it still fit him well, though.
It fit him well, and that's actually why Christopher Nolan had only David Bowie in mind for Nikola Tesla. He needed someone that had that kind of gravitas and panache.
Oh, he had it.
To make the cloning machine and all of the rest of the story believable.
So is there any characters you wanted to point out?
I mean, it's Piper Perabo is the only other person that's the wife that dies.
Mm-hmm. What is she in?
Coyote Ugly is the only movie that I can think of.
Okay, so I had to have seen Coyote Ugly, but I don't really remember it. Other things that they show on here is Angel Has Fallen, Covert Affairs, The Big Leap, Spontaneous, Penny. It looks like it says Penny Dreadful, but then the thing here says City of Angels. So is that like a Penny Dreadful like offshoot?
Probably.
I don't know. But so I don't know her from a lot, but again, like there was nothing to complain about. The acting was superb in this movie.
Yeah, she's in it for a total of 5 minutes. So
yes. Okay, so this movie was actually co-opted from a book.
Yes.
But also it has some real life inspiration.
It does. So there were 2 performers, and I'm probably going to butcher these.
Well, it's a little confusing.
Chung Ling Soo, who is actually William
Ellsworth
Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of appropriation there, just a tad. And then there was also Ching Ling Fu.
Right.
And there were 2 magicians that were going back and forth, and basically, one of them stole the other person's act, and they were trying to one up each other, and they hated each other.
Yeah, so Ellsworth used the name Chung Ling Soo as a way to be in a rivalry with the other guy. But that name was the name used in the movie for Ching Ling Fu, the Chinese person that was presented at the beginning of the movie, even though Chung Ling Soo was a white man named Michael Ellsworth.
Yeah.
It's a very confusing whole.
I think that's probably a little bit of foreshadowing, honestly, and there's a lot of that. So that there's two of them, and it's a double life kind of thing.
But it's not a double life for them. So the reason the rivalry happened was the fishbowl trick that they show at the beginning of this movie. They were fighting over that fishbowl trick. So
that's a fine trick.
They're definitely not doubles. One is a white man and one is Chinese. So I don't know what.
I mean, interestingly enough, the William Robinson gentleman,
Ellsworth.
Yes. He died in a magic bullet trick.
Oof.
Which kind of relates to this movie as well, because there's the whole controversy over Alfred Borden, the bullet trick going wrong. His last words were, "My God, I've been shot," and they were also the first words he's spoken on stage in something like 19 or 20 years.
Wow.
Because he was so committed to the act.
That's a big part of this movie, being committed to the act. Since we're on the topic of the bullet trick, I'll just say really quickly that in this movie, they talk about the bullet trick being this big thing and that it's not dangerous because you don't actually shoot a bullet, and the only way it could be dangerous is if somebody put something in the gun to shoot.
Yeah.
And they show that when Borden is shot by Angier, and presumably you would assume that Angier put something in the gun because he's upset about his wife being killed, whatever. But this trick is actually still used today. It's been used for a long time. Penn and Teller do it. Chris Angel or however you say his name.
It's Chris Angel.
Do it. But I actually found that very recently, or quite recently anyways, somebody died doing it. So Mona Lisa Perez, 20 years old, fatally shot her boyfriend in a botched YouTube stunt in 2017. She pleaded guilty to second-degree manslaughter in December for shooting her boyfriend, father of two, sentenced 6 months in jail. She fired a bullet into a book that Ruiz was holding against his chest.
So they're just using a book as a
to catch the bullet.
Bulletproof vest?
Well, no, they were using it to catch the bullet, but something went wrong. I didn't read
it wasn't a thick enough book, would be my guess.
Oh, jeez. I mean, I don't know if the way the trick is done is different. I know that some of them I was reading catch it in their teeth, and then I know Mythbusters did a thing on it to disprove that that's even possible, and they were showing that it's completely impossible for that to be done.
I think the one I've seen was Penn and Teller, and they do the catch it in the mouth and.
Yeah, I know Chris Angel also had it where it apparently was so realistic looking that they had to remove it from TV.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know how it's done. If they aren't showing anything and it's in your teeth or something, you can't just flick it out like they did in the movie. So I don't know, but sounds awfully dangerous. Do we need entertainment that can kill someone? I'm not sure. That's what we need. You know?
No, I mean, it's a great concept because
it's shocking. There's drama.
Shock value. There's the drama. There's the high stakes if you mess it up. But at the end of the day, it's not worth
death?
Actually dying.
No. I would feel probably not. But I am curious now to see the Penn and Teller trick. So maybe after this, you show me a YouTube clip.
I'll try.
All right. Okay. So, I mean, one of the biggest things in this movie is looking at these two men and trying to figure out which one is the villain here. Is there a villain in this story, and who would it be?
I think they're both the villain. There's no
all four of them.
Well, it's all three of them.
Well, yeah. Well, or all 50 of them.
Yeah. All three. All 103.
Yeah. Okay.
Of them.
So, what's your opinion? Which one is worse or better? Or
that's hard to say. They're so bad in their own right. I mean, I would argue that probably Hugh Jackman's character, because he knowingly lets a man die when he's not dead.
Okay.
I mean, his wife died in an accident, but she seemed okay with it based off of the
She seemed okay with dying?
No, she seemed all right with the change of knot that led to her death.
Yes.
Which is an accident, and it's unfortunate, but it's not something that you're intentionally doing to destroy someone's life. So I would say probably Hugh Jackman's character.
Okay, so I have the opposite opinion. Shocker. I was going to say Borden because, first of all, Hugh Jackman's character has a right to be upset whether or not the wife agreed to the knot. I think part of it would be that you would hope that your friend would know enough that that type of knot was going to swell in the water and that she wouldn't be able to get out and that he would have heeded the warnings that were given to him. Other than that, even if it was a mistake, you're not going to forgive. You're not going to forgive. You need to blame someone. So I think that he had a reason for what he did. And also to say that because he let someone die, what made him worse? I mean, then you got to look at Borden and say he let his brother hang for what happened. Whichever one ended up hanging, we can debate that in the end.
Which one is actually guilty is the question. So maybe it's the right person that was responsible all along.
But would you feel your brother was guilty when it was an honest mistake? Like, no, Hugh Jackman, yes, would. But would you feel your brother was guilty?
No, if it was an accident, it's an accident.
But he let him hang.
Also, Hugh Jackman kills, spoilers, 100 of his own
Also,
self.
Borden allows his wife to commit suicide by basically living a double life and by ignoring her to the point that she's going to commit suicide. And then when she expresses her emotions, he basically tells her he doesn't care.
It's the brother. That's part of the movie.
I get that it's the brother, but the point is that they together agreed.
He was being honest in that moment.
But they together agreed that that was okay. And the assumption would be that they've switched off at some point. Right?
Yeah.
Like in between times. So he must have seen the woman he loved starting to break and spiral, and he should have done something about it, but he didn't. He chose to stay committed to the act. That, to me, is unforgivable.
All right. I mean, I guess we'll agree to disagree because he let a man die and then he killed him.
So letting a man die is worse than letting your wife die. I got it. No, I understand. I got it. Like, we can move on. No, I understand. Okay, so the theme of the movie is, according to Wikipedia, is obsession.
I think that's fair.
Now, I guess for me, the question would be like, which obsession were you most interested in following? Was it the obsession to find out what was in the diary, like an answer to the trick?
So you don't see Christian Bale's obsession, and you do after looking back at it, but you don't see it while you're watching it, which is the great part of this movie.
Were you even looking, as Christopher Nolan would say?
So you're seeing the two different obsessions that run simultaneously, but you don't even realize that you're watching one of them. I mean, for Hugh Jackman's part, he carries it off well, and it's very well shot where you're only focusing on those two and not the three of them. So I mean, Hugh Jackman's obsession is just too far. Like, let it go.
So do you think his obsession is more finding out what the trick is, or more about finding out, or more about like getting vengeance for his wife?
I think it's about destroying the man that took his wife from him. And it's come to the point where he says it in the movie, I don't care about my wife. I care about finding out what the trick is. But to destroy him for what he did to his wife. But at the same time, you're losing sight of why you're doing it in the first place.
That's what happens with obsession. The obsession becomes greater than the reason for the obsession.
I get that. It's let it go. Just move on.
No, I agree with you. So I wanted to ask you, how far would you go for your art or for something you were passionate about? Like, what would be the breaking point for you?
The fact that I'd have to share a wife probably is a bridge too far.
You wouldn't be willing to do that?
I can. No, I don't think I can live a half life.
Oh, that's almost sweet. Even though earlier you said, but we'll try to leave that.
I don't know. I can see suffering for your art and spending time and like hurting yourself to do something fantastic, like having scars on your hands.
Would you kill yourself every night, even knowing that you will be a clone, but that you might be the one dying every night?
I don't think I could go that far either. I don't think I could.
Would you let your brother die?
No.
For your art?
No, I would not.
No. So for you, it's mostly just like blood, sweat, and tears, but like beyond that, you would not.
Now, here's a question.
Yeah?
Would they have put his brother to death if he has an exact twin and you can't definitively prove which one did it?
Our legal system? Yes, they would. 100%.
I don't think they would. I think they would get off on a technicality.
You think that it would be a mistrial because they can't prove?
Which one was which? Yeah, I do.
I mean, nowadays there's DNA. Fair. But back then, I don't think they would have cared. I really don't. I don't. Okay, but as for me, how far I would go for my art, I feel like I would probably go less than you, honestly. Like, I'm willing to do a lot and to be, put myself out there or whatever. But when it starts coming to physical harm, like, we're out. Like, I nothing is that important to me. Nothing is worth putting myself through physical pain.
I mean, like, I'm talking like...
Or anybody else.
Burning your hands on, like, making some kind of pottery or...
I am a baby.
Yeah,
okay?
Yes, you are. You are.
Like, let's be honest. And if it comes to hurting anybody else, like, that would be a deal breaker.
Cuts and bruises on your hands from, like, sculpting something. Like, yeah, that goes with the territory. I don't even have a problem with. Like, cutting off fingers? Probably not that far.
That's a no. Yeah, see, that's a no for me. Okay, so the machine. Okay, so in this movie, we are going to be talking about Tesla a little bit later, but Tesla is part of this movie and his rivalry with Edison, and the machine is made. So basically, Angier goes to Edison goes to Tesla and says, "You made a machine for Borden, and I want the same machine." You find out later that he never made a machine for Borden, but Tesla, for some reason, like, says, "Okay, I'm going to make you one." And like,
I think he just needs the money, and he wants to continue his own research and says, "Fine, I'll build you a machine that you're asking for." But
yeah, it seems weird. It seems weird for him to not be like, "Nah, I didn't." Like, but whatever. And he does. And so this machine is like this electric thing that like shoots electricity, and it's modeled after the teleported man, where you go into it and then your clone is teleported somewhere else, right? Because it's supposed to just teleport you, but it doesn't work. It clones you.
Right. It's supposed to be essentially a teleportation device, but it's a replicate or a cloning machine that makes an exact copy of whatever or whomever is under the beam. So it makes the clones of the hat, clones of the cat, clones of the guy. Right.
So you wanted to talk about this machine a bit. So we'll start with you before we get into.
I mean, I was a little bit frustrated that that's what it came down to, and it was just a cloning machine that was the answer.
The answer for what the trick was.
The trick, like there has to be a better way that's not so far out science fiction.
Okay, related. So you didn't like that science fiction was brought into a movie about magic.
Right. I would have just preferred they had found a different way to do that without going in just a completely arbitrary left turn kind of way.
Okay. Halfway did that take you out of the film?
It did a little bit. It was just kind of like, okay, except actual magic.
So I guess I forget. I think somebody actually asked us as an audience asked, but it's not one of the ones that I actually took a screenshot of, so we can still talk about it, I think. I hope. Pray for me. But so would you say then that you don't feel that science fiction and magic overlap in any way?
No, I think they do. I just think that it was such a kind of easy out to just go, and we're going to do magic now. To make...
You mean science fiction now?
Yeah. Well, we're going to do science fiction, which is equivalent to magic right now. Like, it's a magical occurrence, because electricity is not going to create a clone. It's not a thing.
Right.
It came so out of left field, or like, well, find a different way to do it. I don't know. It just was jarring and took me out of the moment.
Well, then you might like one of the theories. So one of the theories that's out on the interwebs is that it's not a cloning machine. That wouldn't make sense. This is a movie about magic. Why would that be? So it doesn't actually work. It doesn't actually clone anybody. And it's really just the double happening again. But the trick of it all is that it made the audience believe that it was really a cloning machine. Like that was the trick. So the trick wasn't really teleporting anybody. It was making the audience believe that it could really, a machine like that could really exist, and that happens.
I think, I mean, I would buy that, except for the fact that there was row after row of filled up water cages of dead Hugh Jackmans at the end.
Yeah, so people were talking about that in the theory thread, and they were saying that it was like, you know, they had some mock-ups made or something like that to like further the illusion for their art, you know, like going further with their art, you know, had something made of him so that people would believe it.
But there was a guy on the slab in the outside. Like you don't think that even a late 1800s doctor is going to know that it's not a real person?
I don't know. I'm just telling you, this is one of the theories.
I don't think that one holds any water.
No. So the next theory was talking about whether or not, well, who died, right? So in this whole situation, who did you believe died when they went into the machine? Like, was it the clone or was it the original?
Well, it has to be the original because the clone isn't made yet, right? Like you have to go into the machine to then...
Yeah, but isn't the clone teleported into the water to die?
Well, then how is he walking into the machine? He has to walk into the machine.
And then, like, when you look at the original, when they show you the thing, the hat doesn't move, but there's a bunch of hats outside.
Well, yes, but then the clone moves to the balcony or wherever he gets.
Does he move or does the original? Who knows?
It's the clone. It has to be the clone.
Okay, so then you agree with this theory. So this theory says, my impression was always that Angier clone was that an Angier clone was killing himself every night and allowing a new clone to live, rather than Angier Prime repeatedly killing his clones.
Correct. So the first ever one of them was him killing himself, the original Angier, and then a clone takes his place. From there, it was a clone killing himself, and then a new clone basically replacing him every night.
So the original already died at the beginning?
So the original died in the first night, and then
when he shot him.
No, he shot a clone.
Oh my goodness, you're confusing me.
So the original shot the clone when he tested it, but then on the first opening night of doing the trick live, he kills himself in the tub, and then the clone takes his place, and that repeats over and over and over again.
But so, if this were you, right, why wouldn't you clone yourself prior to starting and have the clone go on stage and do the trick instead of you ever being part of it?
Well, because then you have to kill 2 clones rather than 1 clone.
No, just...
Because if the clone goes on stage and does the trick, then he drops into the vat and then kills himself. Mm-hmm. And then you have another clone out there because it creates another copy.
You just shoot him like you shot the other one. But then you're never implicated. You're never part of it.
Well, it just seems like an extra body to hide, honestly.
So we're just worried about too many bodies, so instead we kill ourselves?
Yeah. I think also it comes down to you can't afford to have people see 2 of you at the same time. So it's the other coin of living the half-life. You can only have 1 at a time because he's not willing to commit to hiding in plain sight. So he's not willing to commit that much to his art, but he's willing to die for his art. So it's a different side
fair.
to the obsession.
I guess that's fair. Since we're on this topic, with the clones, right?
Yeah.
If you are cloned and then your clone dies, are you dead or alive? And then also the reverse.
So if you make a clone and your clone dies, your clone dies.
Okay. If you make a clone and your clone kills you, are you dead or alive?
That will come down to whether or not it's an exact copy of me with the same life and experience.
Well, according to this movie, it's exact same life and experience.
Well, in that case, then no, your person carries on to the clone because you're the same person.
So you believe your consciousness can be replicated?
Well, according to this movie,
I can understand a corporeal being replicated, but their consciousness.
According to this movie, it is, yeah.
But do you believe that? I don't know. In the world of where cloning would be able to happen, would your consciousness only remain within your original body, or would it be able to be replicated? And then if that's true, do you experience life twice, like at the same time? Like, how does that work?
Do you split your consciousness? I don't know. If you split or you have two consciousness that are identical, I don't think there's a good answer to that. It comes back to like the old philosophical question of, if you buy a car and you start replacing parts on the car, and over time you've replaced every part on that car to be a replacement piece, is it the same car?
No, because you've replaced all of the pieces.
But it looks exactly the same, and all of the parts were identical copies.
But they're not the same. They're different. They're decidedly different. You bought them. They're different, right?
Well, that's the question. Is it the same car? Because you don't consider it a second car that you bought.
But it is. But it is. Well, anyways, so that's a big thing. So okay, one thing we haven't talked about when it comes to this movie is the women in the film.
Yeah.
So there are wives, girlfriend, wife,
and dead wives. There's living girlfriend and dead wives in this movie.
Yeah. But so I'm really mostly talking about the two living ones, not the dead one. So Scarlett Johansson, first of all, she plays the assistant who becomes a girlfriend and then moves over to the other
magic act.
Yeah. So what do you feel about her betraying
Hugh Jackman?
Hugh Jackman, yeah, because I'm kind of conflicted on it, to be honest.
I mean, I can understand that she feels discarded and not important, so she's kind of checked out of that relationship and moved on.
Now, do you feel he was discarding her by asking her to be a spy?
I think I can understand how she feels that way. Yeah.
See, I felt more like he was including her on his quest to find an answer. Like he was making her an integral part of it rather than doing it without her.
I mean, I can see that side of it too. I can see looking at it going, he doesn't even want me around. He wants me to do his dirty work because he can't get anyone else or can't trust anyone else. And he's just using me to get what he wants.
Now, she goes over to Borden,
Yep.
falls in love with him, even though he had a wife. And honestly, that relationship, now I get knowing at the end that it's two different people and, you know, it's only one of them that's in love with her. The one that has a wife is not, whatever. But she doesn't know that from what we know anyways. I mean, right. I guess we could argue maybe she does. But from what we know as audience members, she doesn't know that. And she does not care. Like, decidedly, she makes comments about, like, you know, we don't talk about her when you're here. And just kind of flippant remarks until she dies. Yeah. And then when she dies, she's, like, pissed that he is flippant about it. And it's like, we know, you know, after the fact that it's probably because it's the other person.
It's the brother that's in love with her and not the dead wife. And he can probably feel bad for his brother. That's not his focus at the moment. He's wrapped up in other things.
Right. But, I mean, is she a bad person for the way that she, like, I mean, she willingly cheated or let him cheat. And she also moved on from this other guy, like in an instant.
I think the only good person is Michael Caine's character. Like, that's the old guy.
Well, I'll get to him because I have an issue with him too. But regardless, do we stand her, like, attitude throughout this movie?
I mean, actually, that's not true. The dead wife, both dead wives are...
We're going to talk about the other dead...
Are good people.
We're going to talk about dead wife number 2. But, okay, so no on Scarlett Johansson.
No, she's not a good person.
So we haven't found the hero of the story. Okay,
there is no hero of the story.
So, okay, dead wife 2. So, Borden's wife, right? Yeah. I am wondering, were they trying to kind of, like, tease that she was magician or magic when she did the whole "you don't love me today" thing, and you find out at the end of the movie that it's because it's the other person? So she intuitively knew when her husband was her husband and when her husband wasn't. She didn't have words for it, but she knew.
Yeah, I think it was more foreshadowing that there was 2 of them more than anything, but it was kind of seen behind the veil, seeing how the trick is being done with you without even realizing that you're seeing it.
Right, because she would listen to him and be like, "Oh, you mean that today? It's sad that you didn't mean it yesterday, though."
Yeah.
But she very clearly could read it, just like that little boy at the beginning in the movie could very clearly see that there was
that was her nephew, I believe.
Was it her nephew?
Yeah.
So maybe we're supposed to like read into the fact that like they have like, you know, some ability or something.
I mean, I think they're just really good at reading people, especially their significant other that they spend quite a lot of time with.
Yeah, that could be. Okay, so but I don't think that she was bad in any way. I think that she was frustrated by not getting attention, but I didn't dislike her.
No.
Now, do you feel she was supportive of his quest to be the greatest magician in the world?
I think she was, but even that, at that point, he still didn't trust her to include her in that. If he had just said, hey, this is what I'm doing with my brother, and it's going to be a sacrifice, and you're just going to have to accept that.
I just had a thought. She didn't know he had a brother?
Yeah.
His wife didn't know he had a brother?
Correct.
How?
He wasn't at the wedding. He was dressed as Fallon.
But, like, didn't she meet his mother?
His mother may have died. Like, he may have no family.
She didn't know her husband had a brother.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with this.
I think that's very well established in this movie.
But I can't understand how that could be. How would you not know that your husband has a brother?
Because he's been keeping up this act for years at that point. He had fully devolved into focusing solely on building out the illusion ahead of actually starting the illusion for years, if not decades.
I'm not sure how I feel about that. I feel like that's probably the biggest deception of all.
You would not forgive me if
No!
If you didn't know I had a brother.
No, not at all. Why would I forgive you for that? Like, that's...
Well, he should... I mean, I can understand keeping things as closely guarded as possible, but you have to be able to include your better half. Your wife, the mother of your children, has to be included in that. Like, that's just...
It's awful.
Widen the circle by one.
I have to agree. Okay, so one thing we usually talk about in these movies, and it's kind of been debated about online, is character development in this movie. So we always say that's really important to connect to a movie to have character development. And I've kind of been struggling with this movie ever since I was reading people saying that the character development kind of sucked. And I've been kind of struggling with it because I kind of agree that you don't see much progress in these characters. So for the two main magicians, their obsession is all they are. And if anything, they devolve rather than evolve.
Right.
As for the ancillary characters, we don't get enough. We don't get any kind of information. So there is devolving character development, I guess, but it's
character progression, if not change. Like, it's the same character moving through a story.
Yeah.
Because they're very, very focused individuals. So it's believable, if not good for the character development, that someone can be so hyper focused on something.
Yeah. So I guess my question though is, did you find the way that they presented these characters enough, or did you need more exposition on the why, the how, the when, the where, and the more progress from them?
I mean, I think there was a little bit of progress, at least in the early parts of it, especially with Alfred very clearly showing remorse going to the funeral and saying he honestly doesn't know because he wasn't the one that tied the knot necessarily, and just feeling so bad for his friend.
I saw no progress from that. If anything, he decided that he didn't feel bad enough.
And he was obviously impacted by that, but there's nothing you can say or do at that moment.
He could stop warring with him. He could, just live a separate life at that point. Like, don't engage in the back and forth.
Angier didn't let him. He was not.
Well, and I wouldn't.
I mean, I can't blame him for that. I would not let that go so easily. I'd be very hyper focused on that. And I can understand both sides of that, but it's not really a story about character development. It's a story about two people's focus and obsession. It's very, very clearly about the magic, not the man.
Yeah. So I'll agree there. So for me, the character development didn't bother me too much with the main characters because we had that obsession that we were following and whatever. But I do wish that they gave a little bit of more exposition on the wife and Olivia. Like for Olivia, like, where did she come from? Why did she decide to be the assistant? Why was she so quick to feel rejected and not like try to kind of like, you know, explain herself? Like, and how did she fall in love so easily, like so quickly? Like, I wanted a little bit more. I kind of felt they kind of made her flippant and you didn't really relate to her. As for the wife of Borden, they showed you progression where she was kind of getting more and more disconnected from him, but you never got much of her story or why or what was happening. All you saw was like a few scenes, and that part kind of started to get to me. But as for the main characters, like, I think we got what we needed to get out of them.
I think it's very clearly not what this movie was focused on.
Yeah. Now, before we move into History Minute, because we do need to do that, we did forget to go back to Cutter, and I did want to do that. So the reason that I was questioning, is Cutter also a villain, is because the whole movie, right? You love him. He's kind of like the level set of the two of them. He's the
voice of reason and saying, guys, you know how it's done. This is the only way it could be done.
Right. And he's like kind of the guy that seems to care for both men, right? But at the end of the movie, he finds out that Angier is Lord Caldwell and that he has Borden's daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm afraid I'm going to get names wrong here. So, and when he finds that out, he decides to then turn to Borden and let him know so that he can, you know, do the final act of shooting Angier and getting his daughter back. And I don't know if that's a hero moment, because while, yes, it's nice that the father is reunited with the daughter, a man had to die for that. And he decided that he was going to choose a side and that's what he was going to do. Or,
well, I think it came down to, he realized that he had killed a lot of people to advance the illusion. He'd killed not only Borden, he'd killed himself and his clones over and over again up until the night that Borden gets arrested.
But he killed clones where Borden killed his wife.
That was an accident and not an intentional plan.
But does another man have to lose his life for this? Like, at what point was enough enough?
Or he would never have given up the daughter, and he had money and resources.
Did he have to give up the daughter? Was Borden a better man to raise that daughter?
He is the actual father.
Well, we actually don't know.
Well, we don't actually. That's a fair point, but he's still the next closest living relative.
I mean, fair, but I wouldn't say that he was in any state to be raising a daughter either. So I don't know if I
mean, they're both fundamentally broken people. I don't think either of them is fully capable of raising a child.
But I don't know if personally I think it's okay to send somebody to murder someone. Like, he knew what would happen. It's not like he didn't know. So does that make him the hero of the story or the villain, or
indifferent extra character?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm conflicted on whether or not morally that was the correct thing to do. You don't seem to have an answer.
I do. I'm inclined to say that it's still for the greater good, given that Angier has killed so many people and it's so not a good person. So
you're really stuck on the Angier is the worst person.
I am stuck on that. Okay. I'm not getting over that. And
well, thank you for at least sticking to your guns. Okay, well, do you have a history minute?
Before we do that, I did want to talk about the foreshadowing in this movie.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of that, and you don't actually see it until after the fact, and I think it was very nicely done.
I do. I agree.
I mean, there's the moment of the double canaries and one of them dying. Mm-hmm. We already mentioned there's the little boy saying, well, what about the brother? Mm-hmm. There's it's his whole way of life, spotting the act instantly for the Asian gentleman. Mm-hmm. whole Michael Caine's character saying it has to be a double. That's the only way it can be done.
Right.
There's so much fed into that. The whole not knowing if he tied the knot or didn't tie the knot.
And though, I'm the type of person that picks up on foreshadowing like a lot. Like I'm usually like, oh, that means something. Like obviously he said it that way. But in this movie, I really didn't pick up on it very much. Like it felt like it was so perfectly woven into the movie that it didn't stand out as like that's a line that's obviously going to mean something in the future.
Right. I mean, there's even other moments. The starting lines with Christian Bale saying, start off with two young men that never meant to hurt anybody. And you're led to think it's Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, but it's Christian Bale twice.
Yeah.
The double for Angier said I played Julius Caesar and I played Faust and all of these characters that came to an end because of their own ambition. And that's foreshadow what's going to happen later on. Yeah,
the way the wives died, it's the way the men died.
Yeah. I think there was the wife saying, you mean it today, not today. It's like I see what you are. All of that was just woven in very well.
You just really wanted to clap for Christopher Nolan. That's really what you wanted to do.
He's very good at that. That's the thing that he's better at than I would say probably almost anyone in the business of subtly putting that stuff in and having a very intricate, complicated story.
Now, would you say that this is a story from him that is what it is? Like you get what you see? Or is it a typical Christopher Nolan where there's more layers that you have to...
I think there's more layers, but it is more cut and dry than most of his movies. Where, I mean, there are some open-ended questions at the end of the movie. Which brother died?
Is Angier fully dead, or is there a clone somewhere walking around that we don't know about?
Right. There's some open-ended parts of this movie, but it's not the same kind of conundrum as Inception, where is he in the dream world or is he back in reality?
Right.
Or Shutter Island's another one, but I'm not going to mention that because I don't want to spoil it for you.
Thank you.
But I very much enjoy that part of his movies.
Well, we'll make sure we'll do another Christopher Nolan movie soon. So if you guys have suggestions on a Christopher Nolan movie that you want us to do, let us know.
Also, Bernard Fallon is an anagram of Alfred Borden. So
it's another foreshadow.
It's the opposite side of the coin. The brother is the same person, just the other side.
You really enjoyed that, huh?
I did.
Yeah.
I really did.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. What do you have for our History Minute?
Tyler's History Minute.
So I was going to talk about the War of the Currents.
Okay.
Which involved Nikola Tesla, which is part of this movie. So it was it's mostly between two people, Tesla and Edison, but there's a third person, Westinghouse, who actually bought all of Tesla's inventions and patents because it was the clearly better technology, to be fair. So it was between alternating current and direct current. So direct current, Thomas Edison had been using it, and it worked fine in the early days of electricity. The problem being that it doesn't travel very far. So in Thomas Edison's world of electricity, you'd have a power plant every few miles, spewing coal and fossil fuels and all of that into the air every few miles because it doesn't go very far.
Ooh.
Whereas alternating current, which switches direction on the current, can travel quite a long ways through the wire so that you don't have to have as many plants.
That's clearly superior.
Thomas Edison is a petty dick to the point where he railed against alternating current, even though he probably knew that it was better. I mean, he had to have been smart enough to know that he was going to lose.
I'm sure that wasn't relevant to him. He just wanted to be superior.
He wanted to win. He didn't care about the consequences. He was obsessed about being known for it and getting his market.
Yeah, we know no one like that, right?
Yeah,
okay.
His idea gets to market, and he is going to kill his competition.
Mm-hmm.
So he helped bring about the electric chair. So there was a bunch of execution by hanging or being hanged by the neck until dead that went badly.
Lovely.
So people were looking for a different method of execution. And so they reached out to Thomas Edison, and he said, yeah, it's totally, you can use alternating current from Westinghouse in Tesla. And so they designed an electric chair. And in 1890, they executed a gentleman by the name of William Kemmler. So they gave him 17 seconds worth of 1,300 volts of alternating current. He did not die and was having trouble breathing.
Ugh.
And then 4 minutes later, or after another 4 minutes, they gave him 2,000 volts, and he caught fire and was then pronounced dead.
Oh, God, that's awful.
Yeah. And then Thomas Edison, being the dick that he is, would go around the country electrocuting animals and showing that alternating current was dangerous. He even electrocuted at least one elephant, probably a few, in public.
Just, ugh.
Which is just so beyond the pale of animal cruelty that I can't even.
No, yeah.
It just so bad.
Agreed.
Didn't matter because alternating current was so much better that it won out. It lit up the Chicago World's Fair, the White City, which is a great book about the serial killer. It also was put in at Niagara Falls for hydroelectric power, and the rest is history. And we all have Nikola Tesla to thank for all our lights.
Well, thank you, Tesla.
Yeah. And then related to this, we actually had a really dark conversation about hanged or hanging elephants.
How did we even get to that point? We were talking about Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla, and then
I said that he was a dick and he started electrocuting elephants, and then we were debating if that would be the best way to kill an elephant.
Oh, I looked it up, and
It was horrifying.
They had tried to hang elephants.
They definitely hanged elephants.
Yeah, and it's horrifying.
They did so very many horrible things. Like that's just. And then you got me a hanged elephant for Valentines Day.
I did. Wasn't that so sweet of me? Yeah. Oh my goodness. Should I try for an electrocuted elephant this year?
I don't even want to know.
It could just be like a lot of hair going up in the air or something.
No, please don't.
No. Okay.
No. That's all I got for the History Minute.
Okay.
As dark as it is.
I really appreciate the darkness. So for audience ask,
Audience asks.
First should probably say, I'm sorry if I skip your audience asks. I waited way too long to screenshot them, so I'm not sure that I grabbed all of them, but I have what I have. So, Tasteless Podcast, they said, is having such a good trick just as impressive as actual magic? Is it as close as we'll get to magic to have something so brilliant?
I mean, I do think that cutting edge science is going to continually flirt with that line of magic. I mean, if you go back in time with a working smartphone that still has access to the internet, that's going to be magic. Like that, you're going to go back in time with electricity. That's going to be magic.
Well, right. But is it as impressive as a trick though?
I mean, I think it is until you learn the secret behind the trick, or the same as you learn the secret behind the technology. I mean, both lose kind of that shine, that mysticism as soon as you know how they work. So if you can figure out the trick or figure out why it works that way, it kind of destroys the whole idea a little bit.
I can agree there. Before I get into the next one, I want to ask you a question. So what I'm assuming at some point in your life, you've seen a magician on stage, right?
Yes.
Have you ever tried to find out what they've done, and or have you ever been successful?
So I have watched a couple magicians, and I've had varying success. It depends on the skill of the magician, really, and whether or not you can slow down the recording.
Gotcha. That's terrible that you do that, but okay.
Rewind it, just pick it apart. I've been known to do that on occasion. Not always very successful. I think I fail more often than I succeed at that, but I have worked it out a few times.
Now, can you perform any magic tricks?
No.
Not at all?
No, I don't
I'm
think
gonna
so.
gonna have to teach you some. Okay, and then this is by a Nick, which not somebody we've heard from before. Their name on Twitter is Go Dragon Zord 86. And they said, I'm not sure if this is too vague a topic, but I would ask, would you classify magic and science as being two parts of a whole, and which do you find more fulfilling?
Two parts of whole. I think there is a lot of overlap there, as we've already covered a little bit. I think the unexplained phenomenon is always going to border on science and magic. Until you figure it out, until you know the inner workings of something, the two are going to be almost interchangeable.
Yeah. Now, what do you find more fulfilling, magic or science?
I think I'm going to have to say science, given that for magic, it's usually some kind of trick to change things as they are.
Misdirection, something like that, yeah.
Right. Whereas with science, it's an actual tangible change to something that you can't explain, where there's a real applicable thing that is being done or changed rather than just an illusion.
I can see that. So for me, actually, I think that magic is more fulfilling because, well, obviously my personal attachment to it, but also I have this fascination with being able to read people and be able to anticipate what they're thinking, feeling, all of that type of stuff. So for magic, that's like the number one thing you have to do. You need to be able to read the person well enough to know how to misdirect them or how to kind of like trick them, you know? And I find that so fascinating, like that people have this skill that they're able to do that. You really have to work at it to be able to do that. And you really need to understand people and how they work and operate. And I just find that so fascinating. For science, I find it interesting, but it's like one of those things where it's like, once you know, you know. But with magic, it's like you have to, it's always different with every person, and every magician does it a little bit differently because it's part of who they are as a person. So I don't know. I find that a little bit more fulfilling for me. It's always a little bit different. There's always something else to know.
I mean, I can see that, but I want
tangible,
a tangible thing.
Yeah.
That's who I am.
Yeah. You're logic based completely. Got it. All right. So do you have the reviews?
Reviews.
So Rotten Tomatoes was down. I do have the ratings for the critic score. I don't have the audience score.
Okay, so shoot that at me.
So this was previously Christopher Nolan's worst rated movie.
I saw that on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
It has been dethroned, however.
So it is at a 76.
That's not bad.
Which is not bad, but it's also not.
It's not Christopher Nolan good. Because for us on this podcast, it's great.
Except for recently. I mean, recently we've been killing it.
We're going to change that next week. Don't worry, guys.
I would give it a solid 7.5.
That's kind of low. You're agreeing with the critics.
No, I'll change it. I'll go at 8. I'll give it a solid 8. I mean, there's great acting. It's a fantastic cast across the board. Can't go wrong. I was very thrown by there's a magical cloning device and that's what we're going with now.
Okay, that makes
sense. So
I
just have to take some points off for that, but the rest of the movie is fine. I love the subtle foreshadowing. I love the having to try to puzzle it out after the fact. I love that it wasn't thrown in your face and you can see the change or the twist ending from the first few minutes. That's the worst part of movies.
Right.
So I overall, I really enjoyed it. I didn't expect that I was going to enjoy it, but it was a very good movie.
Okay. I was going to give it a 9. So the magical mystery machine did not bother me. I found that cloning is not real. In that way anyways. And so it was still magic to me. It was still like, it was in the realm of magic. And I think Cutter was the one who called the whole thing owned by a wizard.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt like that all kind of brought it together and made it make sense. the only thing that really bothered me was lack of character development for the female characters. But it didn't bother me enough because it wasn't the focus of the film.
They were background support characters, and they did fine with the supporting. It was more about the two men.
Yeah, so it didn't bother me enough that I would like take off much points for it or anything. But I mean, I always will look for that in any movie. So other than that though, like I really enjoyed it, and I would probably watch it again, especially if my father wanted to sit down and watch it, because I feel like he'd really enjoy it. So, and I've also now found more magic movies I want to watch. So win-win-win all the way around. But we have a movie next week that I am less than enthused about.
Yeah, so I chose this. I actually had found this searching for another podcast episode. I think it might have been The Greatest Showman, actually. And I saw the trailer for it, and I kind of wrote it off. And then somebody mentioned that it was an underrated movie. So with that, we are going to watch The Ghost and the Darkness.
Yeah, it has Val Kilmer and Michael Douglas.
Yes, and it's a true story, which I love true stories. So,
and it looks terrible. So come back next week to find out how much I hated it, or if by some miracle I actually enjoy it. But that is everything we have. So thank you to Jake Adas's music for our intro and outro music, and we'll be back next week with The Ghost and the Darkness.
Thank you all for listening.